What's up, y'all? It's your boy Joaquin Alexander again, and I'm on the Lotto Hour myself, baby. And to the left of me, my guest speaker, or my guest is, of course, the Govinda Dass. And first part was him, telling him about himself. And the second part is we get into the good stuff. So, the one thing about me is financial literacy. That's my bread and butter, or one of my breads and butters. Different bread, different butter, but we're going to be talking about municipal banks and banking in general and government regulations. I'm pretty well versed in these aspects, but this isn't about me. This is about him, and let's kind of get right to it. So, what is going on with municipal banks? I can't speak.
So I like to start things off with a question.
Okay.
So let's just say our municipal government.
Okay.
How do we get money?
Taxpayers.
Yeah, but we don't do income tax. We're trying to lower property tax, and we do what? Sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting all of our money from sales tax, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is affected the most by sales taxes?
The taxpayer.
Yeah, but like what class of people gets
The
affected?
lowest.
Right. People in town are like, oh, sales taxes are the most fair taxes you can have. Like, That's not true when you're talking about the percentage of money that you're giving. Like, right? Like, I don't pay a property tax. I don't own any property, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I need food, right? Like, that's basically all I'm spending all my money on at this point. So that means that me, as someone who doesn't have a lot of money, I'm putting a higher percentage of my income
To food.
to taxes. Like, right? Like, if I want to go out and eat somewhere, if I want to get, like, some stuff to fix my house. Just the very basic stuff. The half-cent sales taxes seems not a lot in theory, and really it's not. But it's still a regressive tax. In the United States, we have a regressive taxation system. We put the burden of all of our taxation on
The lowest class.
Yes.
Huh.
And so you got to think, where can we get this money from? Well, people here don't want to raise taxes.
No.
Right. But so...
Tyler bills itself as having the lowest tax rate in the state for a city of its size, and they just recently raised the property taxes by like point something, and people are kind of like freaking out over it. But I mean, Tyler's cheap compared to other parts of the state. Dallas, Houston, the bigger cities. These are.
It's interesting when you look at the cost of living in Tyler is actually very low, and if you look at the demographics and all every single job we have, you go down the list, all of them are above the livable wage, except for service industry people who work in restaurants, which are the third most widely kept jobs in the city. So all these people are potentially making less money than it is to live in Tyler, Texas. And it's a big portion of the population. The population that literally... Can you imagine how Tyler... If everyone who worked in the service industry and the restaurant, if they quit working, the entire economy of Tyler would literally collapse. It's such a fundamental part of everything that we do, the people in the service industry.
And it's something that I overlook. Because I was there at one point. But it doesn't pay the bills. You have to work like 2-3 jobs.
And if you work 2 or 3 jobs, and let's say you have kids,
then you have to find somebody to watch your kids and pay. I know I got to. I already went down that road.
Yeah.
Man.
So we gotta think. And the problem is, I think a lot of people have a lack of vision, right? Like, what alternatives can we find? Like, what alternatives can we think of? If you look at other countries, like Germany, for example. Germany is really big on, they have a really big public banking system.
Yes.
And it's not like how we would consider, the way
I've never been to Germany, so I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But
neither have I, but I read about it. And I talked to my friend from Germany, and we had a long conversation about this, about how it functions there. Right? Because the reason, what causes every single recession, financial crisis that we ever had.
What's the cause of it?
Yeah. Banks.
Yeah.
Right? Like Elizabeth Warren, that's how she got famous in the beginning. One of the reasons she was so famous in the beginning, she's like, we need to break down all these, Chase Bank needs to be split up. All these banks that we bailed out need to be split up or else to do it again. We never split them up. They didn't suffer any consequences. We're still having to deal with all these problems. So in Germany, their solution around this is they have a municipal banking system. So let's say the area around Munich, Germany, they have their own municipal bank. It's a publicly owned bank. It is democratically owned and run by the people who live in that area.
Okay.
It is a public bank. And one of the reasons why German manufacturing is so prolific, even though it doesn't have as big of a population as like some of the Asian countries, it was totally destroyed after World War II. All of these things happened to Germany, and yet their manufacturing base is still so good because they have these smaller local manufacturings that are very specialized, very good. Like the ShamWow commercial, like, Germans make great stuff. And then so they're producing all these high quality products that they're exporting all over the world. But in America, if we did something like that, it was like if you're a small business owner and you've got a plan, you have something you want to do that you can manufacture and sell and make money, who do you go to?
The bank.
But the chances are, if you go to a bank, they're going to have exuberant fees. They're going to have credit scores, all this other stuff that's going to push you behind as a person who had disadvantages. But with these municipal banking programs, they not only do they help you get a loan, right? They also help you teach financial literacy. And like they have someone going through the process, like we're going to help you deal with your finances, like we're going to give you advice. Yeah, we're going to help you understand it. They literally have these programs where they bring up people in the community who is like, all right, well, you're interested in doing this. We're going to take you through this learning program and you're going to learn how to be a banker. You're going to learn how to manage your money. You're going to be able to do all this. And in America, actually, we used to have these everywhere. Like pre-World War II, pre-Depression, we had these everywhere. There were municipal banks. There were co-ops. There were all these publicly owned banks that we had everywhere that were owned by the people. And it made
what changed?
So when the Great Depression hit, well, actually no. I won't say, that was one of the, basically all the big private banks pre the Great Depression started wiping them out. Literally every single one. Like, the only public bank left in the United States is the Bank of North Dakota. Fun fact about the Bank of North Dakota, it's one of the only banks to survive two really big financial recessions. The Great Depression and then the recession we had in 2007. Not only did it survive them, right now the Bank of North Dakota is making record profits. And then the way it functions is it's not because when people talk about, public bank, it's corrupt, the government runs it. But that's not true. It's because the secret is even private banks need something to play their money.
Yeah.
And the thing about private banks is that they make all their money. They have an obligation to their shareholders to make as much money as possible. But a public bank does not have an obligation to its shareholders. It has an obligation to the people that create it.
Yeah.
And so that means offering the best rates, giving the most equitable rates, giving away where you can still make profit to sustain itself and make money, but it's not going to charge you $100 because you had a late fee. It's not going to ruin your career. It's not yeah, I know, and all these things that are they come out of it. And with the way that after the 2007 recession, the way banks are set up now is very hard for a bank to fail. Like the legislation they passed, everything they had going for it is now it's very easy to set up for a bank and it's very difficult to get rid of it. But one of the reasons they all disappear is every time a financial crisis happens, the ones who create the problems are the big banks, and the ones that suffer are the little banks. And that's how it's always been.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at American history, from even if you look at oil, when Standard Oil was in power, and the government was like, well, no, you got too much power, and they made them break up. But by that time, John D. Rockefeller was so rich that he was worth 200 plus billion in today's money. But it's almost kind of like Walmart knocked out all the mom and pop stores, right. And then now Amazon's doing to. Well, wouldn't say, because Walmart's so huge that it's not really, but I wouldn't say corporate greed. Maybe?
Yeah, definitely corporate greed. I
greed.
mean, we detest that to most problems in America.
Corporate greed though falls on though a few, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Cause it's just a few of the CEOs like Ford. Is it Ford or the GM?
Yeah.
GM right now they laid off 15,000 people, but the CEO got a $22 million.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and all these people are like, for GM, all these people are like striking,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, okay, you're striking, not gonna work, so and they're blocking all the scabs from coming in and working and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, okay, what's gonna happen? Like, we're
They're
gonna
unionized, but I feel like unions sometimes help and hinder a business, but that's another topic. I look at other countries that do their financial matters, and some of it I'm kind of envious because I'm a capitalist. I love capitalism. I know there's a downside to it, but there's a downside to any model system. If you look in history, I mean, we're still, we haven't got back on the gold standard. I think we're still on a petrodollar. That was in the 70s.
Yeah, we still are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's probably.
at one point we were giving actual like tangible, like I'm gonna give you a piece of gold if you give me 10 cows. You know what I mean? And that's obviously not how things are anymore. But where do we? How do we? I guess it doesn't matter. It's just Americans in general. This is not a black, white, Mexican thing. Any nationality, because we bring race into it. The Asians are kicking our ass. The Asians in America are the wealthiest class of people because that's just what they do. Yeah, I mean, I can go more into it, but maybe on another guest or another topic. I tell people I was at the gas station with my woman and we were gonna go to the fair, and one of the girls behind the counter, she's like, the fair is expensive. No, this is Tyler. No, it's not. Like, go to the Dallas Fair. It's a little bit more expensive, and it's a perception.
Right.
Perception's everything. She's like, well, $12 turkey leg. Like, I ain't talking about $12 turkey leg. I mean, I'll share it with my girl, and she's like, well, you must got money then. So that conversation with that mentality, when you bring it into banks or the masses, why you should have, because I feel. Because we have rules, regulations to everything, policy. If policy doesn't change, or that's why this topic is such a sensitive issue. When you start messing with people's money, or even the idea that we're gonna mess with your money, you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's the best part. If you're you don't have to put your money into the municipal bank, right? Like you don't have to go for a loan. You can just it's its own independent structure. You don't even have to deal with. At the same time, right? There are certain things that I think would make it incredibly popular. First of all, in the United States, banks are allowed to not do service with a religious institution. Like if the bank's like, I don't like what you believe, they're legally allowed to just not do business with you.
Is that a federal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a federal thing.
Okay.
And another thing with the idea of municipal banks isn't necessarily not to make the money and make profit, but it's more so to influence the finances in a community, right? For example, like recycling. There aren't many places in the world that have any kind of form of recycling. But
recycling's expensive.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It is expensive. But one of the things there's potential in.
No, I mean, one man's church, another man's church. I've always believed that. I feel that because the United States is in a weird position. Germany is nowhere near the size of us.
No.
Just as most European countries. I mean, hell, Texas in itself gets like 3/4 of Europe.
Right.
But Texas, was its own republic at one point. But in terms of money, man, I tell people like always educate yourself. Financial literacy, like I was telling you, it's community. It's like they say, it takes a village to raise a child, but if we can't even take away the Republican stuff, the Democratic stuff, the race, just look, money doesn't give a shit what color you are. If you don't have an actual understanding of economics or banking systems or investment bankers or fidelity funds, on and on and on, the Roth IRAs and your 401k and how to invest it, that's as an individual. But the more people you enlighten, tap on Hinduism, whatever, but the more people you enlighten with said practices or education, because I can tell you, a lot of people, I can dress up in a suit and tie and have my hair and everything, and I can say that I know more about money than the next person, and because the perception that I look, oh, he got a suit, he must know about money. I could probably be the biggest snake oil salesman that there was. So I think we have, I don't know, it's a $20 trillion debt.
More than that, it was growing every day.
I don't know. And it's so, I think, to the common person in the United States, where you put your money is super important. But if your bank, your financial institution shoos you away because you're Islamic, or shoos you away because you're Catholic, or whatever, it's kind of.
They can legally do that in the United States.
And I say to people, like, I don't know what it entails to start your own bank or financial institution, or I'm gonna have to research the bank in North Dakota. Because I've said to Mexicans in Tyler and or blacks all across this country, we have a $2.5 trillion purchasing power. Indians, Africans and Asians are coming here and pimping us, in a sense, in education and opening up their own business. We have our own people here to take care of. But if we don't have the funds to do it, we have the money. Why do you think the Koreans come into our communities so we can go and buy the makeup, the hair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? The taco stands, I say this all the time. We need to have the money circulate in our own communities.
And I think this is really important that we talk about, because this is important to talk about the municipal banks, is like the way we use money to influence things. Like lots of conservative people, I'm not going to say Republicans, but lots of conservative people are out of this idea like, oh, well, if you don't have wealth, it's your own fault. But then you see with every single minority community in this country, every single one, whenever they built enough wealth, right?
Generational wealth.
Whenever they built the wealth and they invested in this stuff, they made their own banks and they made their own doctor and they had everything. Black Wall Street in Tulsa burned it down.
That's talking about some sensitive shit, man.
Yeah, I mean, and it's with Latino communities too.
No, it's happened to everybody, man.
Everybody.
But the media will only let you believe, and that's another thing. To have the assets, the capital to be able to buy your own media conglomerate, so it represents Hinduism, Indians, Mexicans, Palauans, even though y'all can't see my girl. But my point is, money doesn't give a shit what you are. The greed, us as human beings, greed transcends everything.
Because that's what happens. People get jealous.
Yeah.
World War II.
Yeah.
Nazi Germany.
That's on a psychology perspective, but man, I'm gonna have to have you as a guest again.
Can I make this one last?
Yeah.
The whole point of it, because of the truth. At the end of the day, the government as a whole, they're not like the people in Washington aren't going to know what the people in Tyler, Texas need. The people in Washington aren't going to know what the people in
Louis
Michigan
Gohmert isn't going to really tell what's going on with it. He's a representative, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then the truth is, at the end of the day, because eventually the economy will collapse. All economies collapse. It's just history. It's just how it happens. And we have to be prepared for it. And if all of our financial institutions are in New York, and if something happens, then
you got to think about that.
We're left down the mud. And that's why the Bank of North Dakota is so interesting, because after the Great Depression, the Bank of North Dakota is one of the only banks left in North Dakota, because it was backed by the people. And when you have something that's backed by the people,
North Dakota too. Shout out to Dickinson.
If you have something backed up by the people, then it's really hard to get rid of it. Because then with the municipal banks, you can support co-ops, you can support credit unions, you can support
Some people's money.
community land trusts, like everything. It's democratizing our money.
You gave me some homework. I appreciate it. So that ends this topic, and I don't have to tell y'all that. You're kind of smart yourselves. So moving on, we're going to be talking about a little about what this man is doing on I can't talk. And talk. Environmental conservation, and we'll be wrapping it up. So we'll see y'all here in a little bit.